are now tuned in to Westworld FM, a podcast about HBO's Westworld. My name is Alex.
And my name is Nick.
Today we will be discussing Season 3, Episode 1 of the show titled Parce Domine. We will not be discussing this season on Westworld preview at the end of the episode, but we will be spoiling everything through Season 3, Episode 1 of the series. So please pause and go catch up if you're not current on the show. You can find more episodes of our podcast at westworld.fm. We're also Westworld FM on Twitter, and you can send feedback to westworldfm@gmail.com to tell us what you think of our show and share your thoughts on HBO's Westworld. Send us corrections, observations, anything regarding Westworld or our podcasts. If you enjoy this show or any other show on the Midwest Podcast Network, please consider heading over to patreon.com/MidwestPodNet and pledge as little as $1 a month to make our network even better. Special thanks to Jason K. and Gojo, who have pledged at the level of $10 per month. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. We're
That's good.
We're in it. We're here.
We are in it. We haven't been in it in several months, but now we're in it.
Yes, we've been out of it, you might say.
Yes.
And now we're in it. And we are harnessing the power of technology to talk about a show that is all about harnessing the power of technology.
Absolutely.
Because due to the good times that are being had around the world right now, we are recording remotely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's quite a weird situation here in the United States. I'm sure some of our listeners are aware of it. Feels on the verge of post-apocalyptic, but we're all still here, and Westworld is out, and we can talk about it over the internet.
It feels, it has been off for a very long time, but it feels like it's been even longer.
Things have accelerated at a pace that, nobody anticipated. But as far as I know, I'm healthy. As far as you know, you're healthy. Everybody around us is pretty good. So, hopefully those of you listening are doing all right. And but if not, hopefully we can get your mind off of things for a little bit and talk about a very sunny and cheery show called Westworld.
Yeah, it'll brighten everybody's day.
Yes. All right. So, Nick, I don't know, did you watch many of the trailers and things that came out for this season?
No, I didn't really watch anything.
Okay. I think I watched maybe the first trailer that came out, which was centered around Caleb, Aaron Paul's character. And then at the very end, you get that shot at the end of this episode with Dolores stepping out of the shadows in the tunnel where they first meet up, and it kind of was like, oh, hey, guess what? This is Westworld Season 3.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's a very cool trailer, and I think if anybody hasn't seen it, you should go back and check it out. But other than that, I've remained relatively blind. I haven't partaken in a lot of the Reddit. I haven't partaken in a lot of the other footage that has seeped out through alternate reality games and such. So I think we're both coming at it from a similar place, and we'll see how much those things drag me in throughout the season. Maybe I'll become a more informed listener at some point. But no, I know that they did a thing at CES where Insight, the company that isn't Delos, that is featured in this episode and seems to be featured heavily in this season, Insight was there at CES to do some type of Westworld thing, and they did something where they invited a bunch of journalists and had people comb through their backlog to try and learn more about them and their families and their lives and things like that, so they could be extra creepy and advertise the show a little bit. But other than that, watching this episode was my first real exposure to this season, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, same. I went in really blind to the point where while Caleb's story was going on and it was kind of doing these really big, heavy crosscuts between him and Dolores' story, I thought they could have easily been taking place during entirely separate times or locations or something like that. I didn't know that they would necessarily converge at all, let alone as quickly as they did. So when they kind of started, I even thought up to the point where the little plane that she was in landed and he was kind of there for the job. I was kind of thinking I feel like these are two separate events, but they ended up tying together, which is great on many levels because it just goes to show how much they've gotten into my head with the last two seasons. And I can't take anything at face value, even though it's literally there. I could almost imagine Jonathan Nolan sitting on the couch next to me and be like, "Hey man, just calm down. Just watch it. It's fine."
That's the thing. I feel as though I was listening to I at least listened to a preview episode from Decoding Westworld because they delved into a few things, and Joanna Robinson mentioned that she thinks this season is going to be a bit of, hey, we heard you and we're not going to be oblique for the sake of being oblique.
Interesting.
But I'm curious if, as you said, they've pulled the wool over our eyes so much previously that this time where it's kind of, it could theoretically hamper our enjoyment and lead to red herrings that they didn't intend to be red herrings. So
yeah, at this point, I'm honestly, with a show of this caliber, I'm down for whatever as long as it's done well. So I spent the first 2 seasons, I think, not trying to be ahead of the ball, just kind of enjoying the ride. And, obviously peeking into the subreddit once in a while and sometimes being happy with what I found and sometimes being frustrated and saying, what am I doing? Like, why am I trying to dilute this experience for myself? And now I'm kind of at the point where almost through necessity, I'm just kind of like, yeah, I got an hour to spare for the show on Sunday, and then I got an X amount of time to think about it and then talk about it. And it's just, I think this season I'm going to try to stay off the subreddit as much as possible. And I think I've said that with every previous season, and it's never come to pass quite exactly like that. I feel like that's going to be the sign of a really killer episode when I have no choice but to launch the app and be like, okay, I got to see what other people think about this.
Yeah, well, we're also looking at a shortened season, so it's only 8 episodes instead of 10 this time around. Yeah. So we'll see if things move a little faster, or if they how crazy they get, how quickly they go. So
yeah, I'm excited. It'll be interesting. I'm really looking forward to the more abbreviated time. I mean, it's only 2 hours, or give or take, but it still could make a huge difference.
Yeah, and the I think the theory was that they were basically just like, okay, so instead of I think they got like a reduced budget. So instead of reducing how much money they were spending per episode, they decided to reduce the amount of episodes and keep the same amount of money.
Okay, that's a good choice.
Or something of that nature. Basically maximize their budget for each episode. So we'll see if the gambit pays off, and if we feel like, man, I wish it would have been 2 more episodes. But I think with where we are in our lives right now, we'll both be like, nope, it was great. So
well, yeah, I mean, I'll always take, if the quality's there, I'll take an extended runtime. Like, I'm definitely on record as saying that I love like a good 3-hour movie as long as it's worthwhile, right? And if it's not just bloated. So, I think that by this point in time with this show, I trust the hands that we're in. So I'm sure that it was the right decision, and they made the most of it. So I'm in. I'm excited. I didn't. I'll be honest. Building up to this season, I was it almost felt more like an obligation in the back of my mind. I was kind of like, oh man, cool. Westworld is a very cool show, but I don't know how much I want a season 3 right now, or how much, even though it's been feels like 7 years since season 2. But yeah, as soon as this one started, I was immediately there and just right back into it. And okay, awesome. I'm ready for more of this show, especially with the direction it's kind of going down. And after having finished this first episode, I am just all in again. And I'm so excited about the way it looks and feels against the previous 2 seasons. And I can talk at greater length about that as we get into it. But I'm very excited once again.
Very, very interesting words. I will say that I am still quite skeptical of what this season is going to bring us. I was waiting and waiting for a moment in this episode to be like, okay, here we are. And I never quite got it. It hasn't quite hooked me yet. I'm just not fully in it. And I know that after 2 years of, desert landscapes and dirty western towns and things like that, I should be much happier about the fact that there's a location change. But I just have not quite fully sunk into what the show's trying to offer yet. So we'll see. We'll have to measure our progress as the season proceeds.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. I'm actually a little surprised it worked for me as well as it did.
Yeah, and I get it. They wanted to offer something different here, and they certainly have. I just need to know, I need to feel a little more Westworld DNA, and it feels like by the end of this episode we're getting there, but I'm just still skeptical. So
yeah, and that's a great way to put it too. It doesn't necessarily feel so much like an episode of Westworld, but I dug it.
All right, well, let's get into it, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so I'm going to break it down scene by scene chronologically. We open with a cold open. We get this notion of like a black circle made up of dots, and we see that there's been a divergence in Beihai, China. And in this first scene, we realize that Dolores has invaded the home of a Delos shareholder in Beihai to take his money and confidential files from his time working at Insight. He tries to attack Dolores and ends up dead due to Dolores playing a trick on him in his augmented reality glasses. I tried to make my scene descriptions as concise as possible, so I think there's a lot that was glossed over there. But Thomas Kretschmann, I believe, plays the shareholder that was on the rooftop, previously known as Baron Strucker in Avengers: Age of Ultron.
Yeah, it's definitely his most prestigious credit.
So this first scene even gives you just kind of this taste of, here we are, dense urban setting, lots of high technology going on, these AR glasses with weird telepresence holograms and things of that nature, super Internet of Things connected house with lockable doors and fireplaces and things of that nature. How did this cold open set the tone for you? Did you enjoy it? What'd you think?
Oh, I did. Yeah, I liked it a lot. I mean, anytime Thomas Kretschmann pops up, I'm always pretty stoked. He's one of those actors that is super cool in just about everything he does. Like, he's a cool character actor. I feel like he could have had a career as a leading man, and probably does in Europe somewhere. But anyway, he's a cool actor, and I kind of did like a double take. I was like, is that him? And sure enough, yeah, he does a lot with the relatively little amount of time he's in the episode. And it reminded me in moments of like Ex Machina. And it's funny because watching the show, so if this was the first episode of Westworld, like season 1, episode 1, it would feel completely different. Because as soon as he's walking through that house and being like, tell me the weather, what's my schedule, lock the doors, turn on the shit, I was like, dude, this is a prison that you're in right now, and you are surrounded by booby traps, and you got to get out. And it just right away, I was just thinking like something is going to get used against him, and sure enough, it all starts to go sideways, and it just the fragility of our relationship with technology is so apparent when I'm watching this show. I'm just thinking like, man, our world, today in 2020, the balance hangs by a thread, and it's been that way for so long that we just are kind of blind to it now. Like, I think back to like the plot of like GoldenEye, the James Bond movie, like involves wiping out financial records digitally and resetting the world, and that's from 1995. Like.
Yeah.
And that was that big of a threat then, and it's only been magnified endlessly by today's standards, let alone in 2058. Is that what year this is, I think?
I believe so, yes.
It's just crazy. But anyway, it's funny how comfortable everybody is with all of it within the show because they don't know any better. But like as a viewer, it really immediately reads as like this cautionary tale of just kind of keeping it at arm's length as best you can. And that kind of reliance on technology is, the pros and cons of it are both demonstrated really excellently in this episode alone, especially with some of the scenes later with Caleb. And I love that about it, that in Westworld season 1 and 2, it felt like it was only the negative aspects of technology. Like it was a wondrous thing for sure. It's like, look at these hosts that we've created, look at this place we've created, look at what's possible, what we're capable of. But ultimately, it's kind of sad, like what people are escaping to Westworld for. It's never positive for anybody. And there's a weird lining of sort of hopefulness in some of the scenes later in this episode, or just at least being able to see the positive applications of this degree of advanced technology. And I really liked that about it. But that's getting beyond this opening scene. But anyway, it was was a really cool scene. It would reminded me of kind of the horror of Ex Machina towards the end. It was really cool to see Dolores again, just kind of running things. I love the confidence in her now, and she, if you were to go back and watch, the pilot of the series, it's a different character at this point. And it's fascinating how much she has changed and how much she can change and how much of it is natural and how much of it is artificial. It's cool to watch a character grow that kind of can't grow but can update.
Yeah, it's like a different meter stick that we measure that by.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really cool. Like it's awesome to watch.
Yeah, I mean, going back to what you said, she has this particular line where she says, "You want to be the dominant species, but you built your whole world with things more like me."
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, in the first 2 seasons of Westworld, I thought it was going to be that, the idea of the dog, the Joker's thing about the dog chasing the car. He's just chasing the car. He doesn't even know what he's going to do when he gets it.
Right.
Dolores is going to get into the real world, but she knows nothing of it. However, it feels like she's gone from a place where she was shackled, and now she comes out into this world where there's all these new tools to play with in terms of manipulating the world around her that she didn't. I mean, she kind of had in Westworld, but it's just kind of interesting to me that, like, I had this notion in my head that there was this safety in the park of what she knows and kind of how she knows how things work. Especially looking at the way, like, Maeve manipulates things in season 2. But by the time, Dolores, clearly she gets out into the real world, she's able to just work this very high-powered dude over without even, blinking an eye. So it was very troubling and awesome and weird and cool and just kind of it's a very unsettling opening of, like, it reminded me a little bit of, like, Funny Games in the way of, like, just this person showing up, inserting themselves into your life and destroying things. So, yeah. All right. There was a new opening for this season. Lots of different imagery. We see, like, an eagle that's in an engine jet stream and the host touching the finger of a host up above it and breaking through the surface of water. And they have this, like, host printed dandelion breaking apart and forming into the AI brain Rehoboam. And then one of the final things is an eagle flying too close to the sun and kind of its feathers kind of melting away or whatever. Did you like the new opening?
I think at this point, it feels to me pretty safe to assume that whichever animal is heavily featured in the opening of the series is supposed to be symbolic of the hosts. And this is probably readily obvious and apparent to other people, but I've never thought about it that way before because I only had 2 seasons to go on, and those animals ultimately kind of showed up, so I thought it was almost sort of a foretelling of what was going to happen. But in season 1, you've got the horse, who is, the original kind of subject of that Muybridge piece in the early 20th century, and, a horse is kind of the ultimate example of just that kind of perfect engineering, perfectly designed to run great distances and with grace and power and speed. Obviously a perfect parallel to the creation of the hosts, and at least as we see them in season 1. And then in season 2 you've got that is it a bison or a bull? I don't remember. I think it's a bison.
I think it's a bison.
Yeah. Breaking out, and obviously that does kind of happen in the Delos facility, but then it's also the hosts becoming this force of strength, breaking free from their confines and where they are. And then in season 3, we've got the eagle or the falcon, whatever it is, out, free, flying, coasting on that jet stream there. And then, the bit of flying too close to the sun. I mean, it's a precarious position for the hosts, and Dolores especially. Like, now you're here, like you said, like the Joker's joke. What do you do? Do you capitalize on it? Do you move forward? Are you successful with whatever your goals are, or are you going to fly a little too close to the sun and ultimately, perish? It's cool. I like it. It's getting a little. The fact that it struck me so instantly while I was watching it, I was like, okay, either I'm just the colossal dumbass who's just now catching up, or they made it a little too apparent this time around. But either way, whatever. It's cool. I always look forward to the updated sequences, and as each week passes and each episode goes on, kind of, extracting what certain bits of the opening sequence mean. as you get more clues from the actual episodes.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that imagery feels so on the nose, Icarus flying too close to the sun, that I'm trying to wonder, like, is this, are they foretelling that? Are they foreshadowing that? Are they red herringing us with the idea that it's going to fail in the end? Like, what could it really mean? But, the fact that I'm sitting here thinking about the opening to the show in that terms is like, all right, it worked.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it exists as a cautionary tale in today's world, right? I mean, the story's so old, it's been around for so long that it's almost advice given before you even embark on whatever endeavor it is. So while it is kind of on the nose, I don't know that I'm not reading too far into it as being like foreshadowing of what is or isn't going to happen. Just so much as like, it's almost like the creators warning to the hosts to kind of say like, this could happen. Be careful.
Yeah, that's fair. Very interesting. All right. So after the opening, we have Caleb. We're introduced to Caleb as he talks to an old friend, Francis, over the phone. Caleb runs fiber as a day job, but he wants to work harder to, quote, keep his scores up, end quote, and get a better job. He also provides money for his mother's medical care, but doesn't make enough to sustain said medical care. So at night, he does crimes on the gig economy app Rico. Caleb meets up with Ash and Giggles to bust open an ATM and steal the cash. They all go their separate ways with no one the wiser. I've missed Aaron Paul on television. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely did. I'm really, really, really glad to see him in another larger role like this. And, he's really good. He's just good. The guy can do a lot with a little, and he can just kind of be there. And I'm like, okay, I get the cut of this guy's jib. And he's really good at just playing a guy, like just kind of a dude, even though he's not. He embodies that. He embodies that so well, and he just has this he can alternate so well between like these aggressive outward displays and then just like this kind of sympathetic, sad puppy kind of vibe. He's his range in this episode alone is awesome, and I'm just glad he's able to, grow beyond Breaking Bad in such a capacity and pop up in so much other stuff.
Yeah, the stupid teenager Jesse Pinkman who gets like dragged into things unwittingly, I think is certainly one flavor, but to kind of he wasn't really the everyman necessarily in that show, but it feels like Aaron Paul's kind of realized this ability to be that everyman. Like people can relate to him, and to kind of put him in the show as that audience cipher for like, all right, here's me out in the world and I'm going to interact with some crazy killer robots. It seemed like a pretty good move for them. Even when he got cast in the show and they announced it, I was like, all right, I think Aaron Paul will do wonders in a Westworld season, provided we didn't have full context of exactly where this was going to head, but you could kind of assume, we knew we were going to probably be out in the real world at this point, so I figured it would probably work pretty well. But
well, are we?
I did have
we though?
I mean, as much as we can ever be with the show.
When he was cast, I remember thinking, I just kind of groaned and I was like, I don't need any more characters. We don't need any. Do not need any new characters. But as soon as this episode got rolling, I mean, within like 2 minutes of seeing him, his whole little montage of him working and all that, right away I was like, oh, this guy is cool. Like I'm excited to learn more about him and hang out with him a little longer. Yeah,
just like him being personable with his robot named George.
Mm-hmm.
And all that stuff is just kind of like, all right, I know, as you said, I get the cut of this guy's jib. It makes sense. I did have a popular tweet this week on our Twitter account over at westworld.fm or at westworldfm. The way that Caleb and Dolores wakes up is pretty identical. I would say, at least. Do you agree?
Yeah, I was struck by that too. I mean, you had sent that tweet before I saw the episode, so I kind of was paying attention to it, but as soon as it was probably by the second or third time it showed him wake up, I was like, oh yeah, this has the same kind of visual cadence to it. So yeah, I would agree 100%.
Yeah, and so, I posted on there, like, there were people like, what does this mean? Or like, he's a host or like whatever, and as soon as I had posted it, I hadn't really arrived at any conclusions about it. But I think, gaining a little more context, thinking about the rest of the episode, I feel like I have some feelings about what it says. But at least for now, I can say it feels like they're setting up Caleb to just be this. I personally, right now, I think Caleb is a human, period. I don't think he's a host. Do you agree with that?
I think he's kind of an in-between. I don't think he's a host, but I don't think he is a 100% flesh and blood human either. There's that.
Yeah, they talk about him having an implant at one point, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and he's talked about being shot in the head before.
Mm-hmm.
He's bloodshot. He's got to be. That's it. We're living in a bloodshot crossover. No, yeah, I think
at least one bloodshot property is good this year.
Yeah. Well, we can't speak to the other one yet. We haven't seen it.
That's true.
We haven't had our screening yet. Yeah, I think there's a little more to him than, but I do think he is essentially human, especially with given regard to his comment later about asking if the person who called him is human or not, and his kind of disappointment and frustration that it's not. Makes me think he is a human, but he just kind of has a more human-like quality to him than any of the hosts ever did. And I think, kind of rewinding just a minute, I think part of the reason that he works so well, and part of the reason we kind of all can gravitate towards him, is because it's the first time that we're seeing a human in this show who is effectively blue collar and who is interacting with technology in sort of a blue collar way. Which again, another props
absolutely.
To them for the casting choice on that, but he just really embodies that so well. And obviously the nature of what he's doing, I mean, it seems like very blue collar work, but tying him to construction and then having that shot of him having his lunch on the girder hanging there like that, those famous photos, it's a great way to visually establish who this guy is without him having to say much, especially even the shots of him visiting his mom and him just kind of walking and just the way he carries himself. It's very every man, which is really refreshing to have a character like that on this show that is so full of like really heady characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also think it struck me right from the start, but it feels like they're really leaning into some heavy film noir influence for his character. He feels like a really classic protagonist from that era, with like kind of the detached, kind of the VO that's kind of running alongside the visuals of him, his occupation, the fact that this kind of femme fatale lands in his arms at the end of the episode and is assuredly going to cause his world to turn upside down. The nature of his kind of double life of he's got his day job, his night job, and his night job is getting his hands dirty for people. It's all textbook, and it's another reason why I loved it. I was like, oh, this is really cool to drag yet another genre into this series and kind of weave it in with the world that they've already created. It's awesome. I mean, they've done the Western already. They did a little bit of the samurai stuff that we got into, and now it's cool that they're tackling very conventional film noir stuff and yet making it feel fresh. It's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. What did you think about the kind of gig economy, the Uber of crime?
Oh man, that was hilarious. I remember, I'm sure this was one of the first thoughts in years, and probably John's head too. I was like, oh man, I want this video game. Like we joked about having a Westworld video game for the past 2 seasons, and I was like, oh, I want this version of it too. But it's like, it's just GTA really.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's very like, anytime I start to think about the implications of it, like, all right, is this like a completely off book cell phone that he's got that like people can't try? I'm like trying to like figure out how can this even exist on the internet, but VPNs, or he's using a VPN on his phone. That's how the government hasn't cracked. It's on the Rico apps servers are on the same server as the Pirate Bay in 2015.
It must be.
So yeah, they're just always moving, making sure that they can't be taken down. We did have a line here. He said one of the times that he's talking to Francis on the phone, he says, "They say it's a meritocracy. The system picks the right people for the right job, which is great, I guess, but I don't know where that leaves the rest of us, the people who didn't make the cut. Honestly, I don't mind the bottom of the barrel. At least you have some interesting company." It's very interesting. I feel like he also talked about keeping his scores up in order to get better jobs. It's it seems like this. Did you ever watch the Bryce Dallas Howard episode of Black Mirror?
I haven't seen it.
It's this. The whole episode centers around the social network where people rate each other.
Oh yeah. I've heard of it. Yeah. I'm familiar.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it just feels like this is something that's realized in Westworld now as well. You know, these people have their ratings. We get some talk later on about Rehoboam, you know, kind of helping to chart people and make the most of their potential and things like that. It's like this potential score or something like that. So they talked around it a lot, but at least that's kind of the feeling that I got out of what they were saying throughout this episode. So
yeah, and that was that piece of dialogue about I don't mind the bottom of the barrel, there's interesting company, was like you could practically hear Humphrey Bogart saying that. Like it's perfect. It's like something on a Max Payne.
Yeah.
It was a bit of writing that really stood out, and I was like, oh, this is cool, man. I really dug the whole vibe. It's interesting to examine Westworld from that perspective, from the bottom of the barrel, essentially.
Yeah, well, and that's when he meets Ash and Giggles. Ash is played by Lena Waithe, and Giggles is played by Marshawn Lynch, who's a current quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. It's fun to see this injection of new characters. You were kind of playing with like new... We're used to the archetypes of Westerns, but to kind of see these kind of weird cyberpunk people showing up is cool. Is a lot of fun.
The Matrix 4, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Any other thoughts on that section?
I don't think so. Let me look at my notes real quick. I said, who is Francis, was one of my questions, which, well, my notes are always so disjointed. On one of them I have, is that the bus, with a question mark? But no, it was Marshawn Lynch. We haven't gotten... Okay, no, that's where we are. Okay, no, nothing else from there. I love the whole vibe. I really want to see more of it, and I think we're going to get more of it, so lucky me.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, next up we have host Charlotte Hale arriving at Delos for a board meeting. The entire board is against her idea of taking the company private, save for presumably the largest shareholder, who has left a machine proxy in his place. Against most of the board's wishes, she decides to continue host production and assures the board that once Bernard Lowe is caught, everything will be okay. So it looks like the whole bloodbath at Delos, which took place 3 months prior to this scene at least, who knows about the rest of the episode, is being pinned on Bernard, and Bernard is off somewhere, as we will find out in the next scene. Any thoughts on this? Once again, we get a little more idea of like telepresence. She's able to just mute a dude who we'd think was just sitting at the table, but instead he's a hologram, of course. Things of that nature.
They're all working from home as well.
Yeah, maybe the coronavirus is still out on rampaging the landscape in 2058. All the rich people get to stay home and work, and people like Caleb have to go out on the streets.
Oh, man. You know, based on some of the behavior I've seen on social media from some folk I know, there's a chance it could be hanging around that long.
Hopefully not,
yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah, so who is this really in Charlotte Hale's body?
That's the thing. We don't really know. We know Dolores took like 5 pearls with her. I think one of them was red. But other than that, I don't necessarily know. Like, I don't know if, even with the host Tommy Flanagan that shows up later in the episode, it's hard for me to understand if these are like actual whole hosts, like other people hosts, or if these are kind of like just Dolores proxies. Is she putting herself into all of these people?
That's what I was thinking.
That type of thing. Yeah. Because it's, I mean, you know, I would assume she mentioned, I think at the end of season 2 at some point, she mentions about how she's read all of Charlotte's book, like what was in the Valley Beyond. So she obviously knows enough about Charlotte that she could play a convincing Charlotte to everybody else who knows her. But I don't know if that means that she coded like a new Charlotte who is sympathetic to her mission, or what the deal is.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just Teddy in there. Maybe that beautiful James Marsden butt is hidden somewhere in that Charlotte Hale body, you know?
Yep. Maybe the Teddy butt counter will go up another notch this season.
Yes. It's just like a flash of naked James Marsden as superimposed over Tessa Thompson.
Yeah, we have the technology. Yeah, I don't know what to think, but that's a sequence that I'm very interested to pay more attention to as it continues to unfold, to see, how many angles is Dolores playing this all from.
Yeah, I have to assume that the one of the women at the board meeting asked, "Where's the money coming from?" And Charlotte's, of course, like, "Oh, you don't have to worry about that with private equity. That's the whole point." So I have to assume that the money that Dolores stole from Thomas Kretschmann is probably what they're using to inject as private equity. So Dolores will start taking more control of Delos. That's my guess.
Interesting.
My not completely educated guess.
Hey,
so
I'll take it.
We'll see. All right, we can move on to Bernard. Bernard is living on a farm as a man on the run.
Bernard is the Hulk.
Armand Delgado. By day, he works in what looks like an artificial meat butchery. By night, he interrogates himself because he doesn't trust that Dolores isn't screwing with him somehow. And there's clearly a manhunt out for him. And it seems like there's a few guys who recognize him at work. I'm kind of sad that Bernard feels so far behind Dolores in terms of, like, they've had these 3 months to get away from that bloodbath, and he's had 3 months to try and figure out what Dolores's plan is and try to counteract that, and the fact that he's just had to, like, slum it out in the farmlands, I don't know, but it seems to be what drives him to go back is to get some help. I don't know if you agree with that, or what are your feelings on Bernard's current predicament?
This is another little, feels like a different genre that they're kind of dipping into that I think is really awesome. Like, I'm super into it. I like, of all the characters, he's definitely the right one to kind of have on the outside like that on the run. Yeah, again, it feels familiar. It feels like other stuff that we've seen, but I like it a lot, and I'm not at all fatigued by it. I'm really glad though that we didn't spend like 3 episodes in the abattoir with Bernard. I'm glad that he immediately just got on the road and was like, you know what? I got to go back to Westworld, and I am super excited. Like you were saying at the very beginning of this episode, that you kind of miss that Westworld landscape and that vibe. We're going to be back, I'm sure, next week, and that's really exciting. It's funny, only one episode removed, and I love all the new stuff, but in the back of my mind, I was kind of like, I want to get back and see what's going on over there, and we're gonna. So
we have to go back.
Yeah, exactly. It's cool. It's exciting, and I'm really. That's the thing. We spent so much time with Bernard in season 1, and then we spent a significant amount of time with him in season 2. That he feels kind of like the OG character to me that we've been along for the ride with, even more than Dolores. Like, Dolores feels almost like this. She's kind of like Darth Vader at this point, where, like, yeah, she is a character. She's a pivotal character. She's a really awesome character, but you don't feel like you're in the passenger seat along with her on her journey. You're just kind of watching her journey happen. But with Bernard, I feel like I'm kind of in it with him, kind of rooting for him. And so it's cool to see him making some forward progress and trying to figure out what he can do to avert disaster in his mind. Yeah,
and so I think that's the thing, is like this very, I don't know, obviously, I guess, I don't know if I want to use that word, but I will say very obviously feels a lot like the Incredible Hulk to me.
Oh yeah,
the beginning.
Definitely.
It certainly falls into those tropes, but at least kind of like it gives us a little more of that weird world building. You have these like metal husk of skeletons that they're carving meat off of for some reason. I don't get it, but it seems weird. And just kind of to see him, Bernard was left in a real weird state by the end of season 2, and to kind of see some of that carry over where he's just kind of like, I don't even know what to think anymore. I don't know if I'm living by my own programming or if I'm just another pawn in this whole thing. It's nice to have, like, he's still in that uncertainty land, but it's interesting to not be like, we're currently on the same page as him. It's not like we're seeing different snapshots of what he was doing in the past, like in season 2.
Yeah, that's true.
And helping to piece it all together.
Yep.
We're right there with him now.
Yeah, again, which is awesome.
Yeah. All right, we'll come back to Bernard in a little bit. So Dolores attends a party in London as Laura Espin, guest of Liam Dempsey, higher up at Insight, played by John Gallagher Jr. Liam is being recognized as the technologist of the year, and Liam's friend Roderick asserts that maybe human life is a simulation, but Dolores brushes it off. Liam's right-hand man Martin informs him that their partners want to meet, and Liam tries to brush that off, but they're going to come to him because it can't wait. Liam then quote-unquote convinces Dolores to come with him, and she has some friends she's been meaning to see in LA anyway. All right. John Gallagher Jr. of 10 Cloverfield Lane and the Newsroom fame. I'm a pretty big fan of his. I don't know what you thought of him in this role, and if you have any prior experience.
I remember him in 10 Cloverfield Lane. He was cool in that. In this, for some reason, he kept reminding me of Josh Groban, so I kept referring to him as Josh Groban.
Yeah.
And then I started to wish that it was Josh Groban, and then that led me down a whole other rabbit hole. Because I just saw he was in an episode of Parks and Rec that I just watched for like 3 seconds, and it made me laugh because he's in like those 2 or 3 episodes of The Office, and he's fantastic in them. And I kept thinking, like, man, Josh Groban should act more. And then I got distracted by John Gallagher Jr. in this, and that made me start thinking about Josh Groban. And I was like, man, how cool would it have been if they had cast Josh Groban in this role? Anyway.
They already got Marshawn Lynch taking up all the stunt casting in this season. So
yeah, they shot their budget on Marshawn. Yeah. Anyway,
Josh Groban was way out of the ballpark
sure.
on the pay scale.
He strikes me as the kind of celebrity who would be like, yeah, I'll do it for $10. Like I'm in.
Yeah.
He's got.
You want me in Westworld?
He's got money. He's fine. I did like this sequence. It's fine. It's the stuff of the episode that I have the least amount to say about because it's all feels like territory we've walked over before in the past. It's a little more interesting now that Dolores is there with them and watching her kind of take it all in, but she doesn't really do a lot. She's just kind of there like observing. Tommy Flanagan though is such a baller, and he is so versatile. Man, that guy can do it all, despite the fact that he has such a distinct look. He can play like just this dirty biker dude in Sons of Anarchy, and he's in tons of movies. I mean, he's all over the place. And then here he is. He's all slick. He looks like he's in like the new John Wick movie in this. It's just awesome looking.
Yeah.
And he just carries himself with a really cool swagger in this. And I'm really glad that there's another one of him out there in the show to continue being around, which is really exciting.
Well, and to go with the fast forward there, sadly my memory of things like Gladiator and the other things that he's been in, it just feels so long ago to me that like when he showed up on screen, I immediately went to IMDb. I was like, okay, who is that?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I need to know who he is, and I was right. But it's interesting because I feel like it was so very clear to me. It was like, all right, this is a dude who's going to be the stick in the mud that's going to stop Dolores from doing whatever she needs to do. And for an episode, I was right about that, but now she's become a tool of hers.
Yeah.
Now he has become a tool of hers to get into the system again. Like it's very interesting to me the way that they set him up as this very menacing presence who clearly has control of the situation and handles John Gallagher Jr. in a way that he needs to be handled for whatever the hell he's doing. But, we're leaking into things. I'm leaking into things later on. But the idea of like him being like, I've been protecting this thing of your father's for 20 years now, and I will protect it. Like it's nice they even flip it on its head by the end of the season, by the end of the episode, where I feel like it would have been like halfway through the season of any other TV show where they would have been like, all right, now we have host Tommy to be a force of good or be a force of Dolores's good. So it's kind of interesting that it all moved very quickly in this episode.
Yeah. And again, I like that quicker pace to everything. It's nice to not just spend forever kind of spending a whole episode of her trying to juke him and get some stuff done. It's just like, all right, moving along. Gives you the vibe that she has not wasted these past 3 months, which is also really exciting.
Yeah. Real quick, one of Liam's friends, the dude who talks about the simulation in the simulation, is played by Rafi Gavran. He was in like Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, and he shows up in a little bit of A Star Is Born. I've always liked him quite a bit, even whenever he shows up. And even those 2 other roles are very different roles for him anyway, and this feels like, another weird thing for him to do. But the whole notion that his character brings up of like, maybe we're in a simulation of a simulation feels like another red herring to me, or it probably was a thing that was on everybody's tongue by the end of season 1 and things like that. But do you have any thoughts on that particular concept and what it means for Westworld?
It's definitely the Nolan genes coming out and saying, well, we got to talk about this. I'm excited to see where it might go. I think Dolores sums it up pretty well, where she's like, I think that people will believe whatever helps them. I think that they might be in a simulation and they might not, but either way, watching the different characters navigate that thought is what will be interesting to see play out. Maybe not necessarily a commitment one way or the other from the writers, but just watching how characters navigate that. Or if it even comes up again, it may not.
Yeah, I feel like Dolores, like, there's part of me that was expecting Dolores to react to that question and be like, wait, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I just got out of this one and now I got to get out of another one. But, it feels like it's hitting on that main theme of like, all right, what's real and what's not, and does real even mean anything anymore, and that type of thing. So, all right. Next up, Caleb wakes up. He interviews for a job and he goes to talk to a therapist in person. The therapist discusses his conversations with Francis and mentions a program that these conversations are connected to. Caleb thinks the benefits of the program are conditional on his participation, but the therapist thinks he has to want to move on too. After the appointment, instead of talking to Francis, Caleb takes another job on the Rico app and basically restrains and tranquilizes a drug user so he doesn't get sent to prison for taking illegal drugs. This is where we start to kind of feel and get the threads of like, Caleb was once a soldier, and at least to me it was kind of like, all right, this is some type of, I don't know if it's monitoring him after he's come back from the war or how long it's been since he's been in the war and that type of thing. But what did you think about this context for him and Francis and who Francis is?
Yeah, I think all that stuff is really cool. I like the kind of mystery slowly unraveling throughout the episode, and I'm glad we get the conclusion again towards the end of this episode, and we didn't draw it out for like 3 or 4 episodes of just like, who is this Francis guy, and like having to piece it together. And I mean, it starts to...
Episode 7, Tommy's actually dead. Tommy Francis. Who's Tommy?
Tommy Flanagan, obviously. Thank goodness he's not dead.
Sorry.
Yeah. But, exactly. And, it started to kind of feel like we knew where it was going, but I really liked, the show definitely has employed flashbacks a lot throughout its entire run, but I liked these little tiny just visual snippets of Caleb running out of that building with his rifle, and we kind of knew that, like, okay, whatever he's seeing isn't good, and assuming that it has something to do with Francis. But yeah, we've seen this kind of thing before with the kind of, he's not actually talking to him, but it was still cool. I mean, it's always more interesting to see how the person who's talking to them is acting and reacting instead of, wondering who was on the other end. So it's neat. Yeah. It's sad. You wonder who exactly they were and who they meant to each other. But, ultimately you don't really get that answer so much. But it's awesome that it was Kid Cudi, and we got a Need for Speed reunion.
Yeah.
I'm jumping ahead here, but
yeah.
the greater Need for Speed verse is expanding.
They were doing jobs for the Monarch. And,
oh my God.
Things fell by the wayside.
Can we rule out that the Monarch is not the guy who's in charge of the, I forgot the name for it already, but the system
of Insight or Rehoboam?
Yes, we don't know.
Potentially.
We don't.
It's entirely possible.
Don't know.
Michael Keaton could show up at any minute in anything, and I'd believe it. So.
Oh man, I hope so. I hope Jonathan Nolan is like secretly a massive fan of Need for Speed and just wanted to pull as many of that cast into this series as he could.
It's just us and him.
Oh. Man, I hope so. I hope Dominic Cooper is on board next. Oh my gosh, just playing another delicious villain.
He's just Jesse Custer in Westworld.
Yeah.
All right. There was a little bit there at the end about the somebody on the Rico app hired him to put up a job to like basically tranquilize this rich guy who's taking illegal drugs that has some priors and didn't want to get arrested. So we get a little bit more of the class warfare of like, all right, well, he's rich, so he doesn't get to go to prison, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Felt a little ham-fisted to me, but, you know, not unexpected necessarily. So
Yeah, I think that, you know, a lot of people, if they're going to get the messages that they're trying to illustrate, they're going to need some ham-fisted, but I don't know that those people are the ones watching the show in the first place.
Yeah, that's fair. Very fair. Those people unsubscribed when Game of Thrones ended, right?
Yeah, afraid so.
Yeah, and one of the lines that Caleb has to Francis, he says, I think about what you told me once when we were being medevaced out. You said that they built the world to be a game and then they rigged it to make sure they always won. Feels like pretty important to the central thesis of this first episode back, at least, and maybe some of the stuff that's going on with Insight, in my opinion, and Rehoboam. So
yeah, I really liked that. I really liked that whole sequence with them kind of drugging him and again stripping away the actual in scene dialogue and just having the VO and kind of the slowed down shots and the music and letting that kind of demonstrate for you what's going on, and watching Aaron Paul trying to diffuse the situation and how it was kind of escalating, and just the, you know, the shock of seeing this naked guy freaking out and like the lighting of that projector on him. It was just all really cool. Have you watched any Altered Carbon?
I have not yet. I've wanted to because I've heard great things, but not yet. That's funny that you've heard great things. None of those great things came from me because it's not good, but it is good. Like okay.
It's the kind of thing that you and I would like. Like there are movies and that have this kind of vibe where I can look at it and be like, oh, no one else is going to like that, but me and Alex probably will. We'll kind of champion it in some way. It's kind of like that, but it's ultimately, season 1 is not very good. It's way too long. It's kind of a slog. It kind of just drags, and I'm a Joel Kinnaman apologist because I like him a lot, and he is in just bad project after bad project, and I think he just has potential to be so good. He just keeps getting just the wrong kind of thing, and he's a good fit for the show. They just don't necessarily. It's just too much. It's too long. But anyway, this sequence reminded me a lot of something that would have been in an episode of Altered Carbon, and it took me like a year and a half to finish season 1 of Altered Carbon. And when I did, I was like, oh, thank God. But at the same time, I kind of already started to miss it. And I was going to jump into I watched the first episode of season 2 and I liked it, but I didn't keep going with it. But anyway, this sequence kind of reminded me of something like that. And something from that. And if you ever do watch a couple episodes of it, which I do think you should give it a shot, it'll probably jump out in your mind. You'll probably remember like this visually, this kind of feels like something out of that. Anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense. I will check it out at some point. I know I've wanted to because I've at least heard that it's something that I would like from you and from other people, but we'll see at some point. But on a side note, with Joel Kinnaman, by the way, did you watch any of Hannah on Amazon yet?
Oh, I forgot he was in that. I haven't watched that yet.
It's him, and also Lyndon is in there as well.
What?
So it's a little The Killing reunion in some ways.
That's awesome.
And you should watch it because it's a very good show.
Is he like the Eric Bana character?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. That is awesome.
Yes. You will enjoy it very, very much. So
I will.
That, with all the spare time that you have. All right. Next up, we've got Dolores and Liam arriving in L.A., and Liam introduces Dolores to Rehoboam, the AI at the center of Insight, built by his father to give every human a course to follow. Liam has to leave to meet with Martel, a mysterious partner of his. Dolores secretly follows to eavesdrop on the conversation. Martel thinks there's a mole inside of Insight messing with Rehoboam. Liam thinks that they should worry about real problems like the shit show at Delos, which causes Martel to threaten his life. He relents and leaves the meeting. So I didn't necessarily do my research here. Rehoboam is in the Bible. The name Rehoboam. Yes, Rehoboam was the first king of the kingdom of Judah. He's the successor to Solomon and the grandson of David and Goliath fame. So I don't know a whole lot about what that connects. If our friend Original Joseph, who's the biblical scholar that was watching Preacher, happens to be listening to Westworld FM, please write in and let us know what you think Rehoboam means in this bigger picture sense. But Yeah, for some reason I find the idea very compelling of this AI that has used machine learning to figure out what each person should do, despite the fact that that probably leads to a terrible dystopia. What did you think of Rehoboam?
Yeah, it's like the
what it's doing?
Futuristic dystopian aptitude test they give you in like middle school or whatever. Yeah, it's a very cool device to play with thematically. I think that every time I think Westworld is about to bite off more than it can chew, it manages to find a way to work that into what we're already dealing with, and it feels like we've been dealing with it all along, whether we knew it or not, which is pretty spectacular on the part of the writing team. It's awesome, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about it and seeing how they work it into the larger world. I think it's also cool, again, we keep coming back to the pace of this episode and the way the season feels so far, and I'm glad that we just cut right to the chase of Liam being like, yeah, no one's in control of it except the person who made it originally, and her being like, who is that? Like, we're introduced to this thing, questions are asked about it, most of those questions get answered, and then they prompt new questions, and that is very cool to me. I'm glad we're not spending forever just barely skimming the surface of this thing. We're already just diving right into it.
Yeah, and here's the thing, like I think at least some of my, I'll put on a little bit of crackpot hat here,
Ooh.
but I think those kind of cards that we're seeing of the black circle made out of a bunch of little black dots is like the interface to Rehoboam. It's somebody watching, because you keep seeing these, like, it's saying there's an anomaly detected, and it's Dolores over in Bayhigh and she's robbing and killing this shareholder guy, and other things like that. Here's Caleb waking up and doing something weird today. I don't know. It just says that there's like minor anomalies or something like that. I feel like those are connected somehow, and I don't know if we'll get more confirmation of that or not. But
I agree. Would agree with that.
I think in the larger scheme of things, it feels to me as though Rehoboam is this machine putting humans on loops in a similar way to the hosts were on loops from the humans in Westworld, So I think there's going to be interesting relational aspects that feed into Caleb and Dolores's relationship based off of this. But we'll have to see if that's the case.
I would that line about what does it say? It said in like the little summary in HBO. It said if you're stuck in a continuous loop, why not try walking in a straight line? Something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. So this theme of these people caught in loops, I think, is definitely going to expand beyond the hosts and into Caleb, and then potentially to the technology that exists outside of Westworld as well, outside of Delos. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that we've been used to this world where Delos is king and Delos is kind of reigning over everything, and now we're in an outside world where Delos is just a piece of everything that's going on outside, and sort of a piece that everyone's kind of looking down on.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a weird repositioning of perspective.
Yeah, recontextualizing our understanding of the greater world of Westworld.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think. There was one other thing that I was thinking. I lost it, I think.
I had one note from this sequence that right as Dolores was riding the motorcycle up, that I just wrote down. I love the score, because the score is so awesome.
Oh yeah, we've kind of moved into, away from some of the player piano kind of stuff, right? And so it allowing, like, kind of opening up. Ramin Djawadi, I believe, is back for the season. I'd have to double check and make sure of that, but I assume he is, and to kind of let him play in a wider field, always great. Pom Clementif shows up as the mysterious partner, Martel. Kind of fun to see her in like an antagonistic sense, when all I really know her from is Mantis from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah,
so
that was cool. I like her.
The one thing that I was going to bring up, there was, I heard about this on Decoding Westworld, and she had heard about it from the Reddit, but somebody on the Reddit brought up the idea there was a conversation between Felix and Sylvester a long time ago, because Felix wanted to be a programmer, and he was messing with the bird, and that's what led to him giving Maeve all of her powers, if you remember this at all. Felix mentioned something about, like, you're never going to be a programmer, and it led people to kind of be like, are people assigned their duties at birth and things like that? But I wonder if that was a little seed leading up to insight in this season that other people managed to catch. It kind of fits in with that greater. It'll be crazy if that's true.
That is so good. That is so good. Yeah, I would not be surprised at all if somebody, because I mean, the series is definitely drawing on, like I've said already in this episode, like on a lot of other established stuff. So, and that's certainly a theme that's been played with in science fiction for a long time. So, again, there's nothing wrong with that. Like all the greats steal from the other greats. So, I'm all for it. But yeah, I would not have put those pieces together.
Yeah, me neither. That's all credit to Reddit on that one. So, all right, let's go back to Bernard for a minute. Bernard goes into work one day. He gets jumped by two men who recognize him from a wanted poster because there's still paper in the outside world for some reason. He tries to appeal to them, but it doesn't work. So in order to fight back, he hits a button to reprogram himself on the fly and take the men out. Fun to see Jeffrey Wright kicking some ass for once on the show.
Yeah. For sure. And I wonder what does that mean? Like, what is he doing? Because it's almost like he's switching into like another mode, because he's doing it when he's kind of self-diagnosing himself. Like he's almost going down to like a safe mode or something. I wonder, I mean, we're absolutely going to get, I was about to say, I wonder if we'll hear more about that. Yeah, of course we will. But I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, to me it kind of smelled of like he's removing the human inhibitions. You know, like the Bernard that was crafted and the pieces of Arnold that are in there. It seems like by all accounts we would never think of Arnold or Bernard as a fighter, but because he's a host, he can do those things if he so wishes. Yeah. You know? So by stripping out or like muting his personality or attenuating who he is as an identity and allowing, just full power host mode to take these dudes out.
Yeah, I was thinking like, did Bernard partition a separate part of himself just for these instances?
Yes, absolutely.
He's got a separate partition.
Recovery mode.
Yeah, exactly. Target mode. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah, it's I was thinking to myself this applies to this scene, but it was an earlier scene where Dolores is doing something and she's talking to like her virtual assistant. And she's kind of saying like, book me an apartment here or whatever. I was thinking of the Matrix and how they can obviously just run all those simulations and all those disks, and they can just effectively upload that information into their brain so they have it at their fingertips. And I was thinking that the hosts they don't come pre-installed with any of that stuff. Like for a second there, I was thinking about like if the hosts were in a confrontation, would they already know like advanced martial arts? Would they be able to immediately learn? And then I remembered like, no, that's not the case. It's easy to think that way, but it's not the case. Like we knew that Maeve was very intelligent and very cunning, but she was not who she is until the guys went in and dialed everything up to 11. And so while the hosts have the ability to be made into that, they're not necessarily, they don't come out of the box like ready to be super soldiers and, super thinkers and that kind of thing, which is something that I don't think is necessarily news to anybody, but I had to remind myself because we're used to the idea of these hosts being all powerful, and they have the potential to be, but they have to be programmed into that direction, which is something that I think we kind of see. It's kind of essentially what Bernard is letting himself do. But it's not. It again only intensifies the parallel between the hosts and the humans. Like as humans, every one of us is born with so much potential, and it's the whether or not we choose to capitalize on it or what sort of things we choose to put our time and our effort into. What results those will yield. And it's the same with a lot of the hosts. A lot of them might just never see their full potential, whereas they don't necessarily have a choice.
Yeah, absolutely. No, to me, when he was hitting that button, it kind of felt as though, like, I felt he was adjusting that, like, 10-point star that they were messing with on me,
Mm-hmm.
Like he's dialing up his aggressiveness to 10 and dialing his empathy down to 0 or something like that, So,
no, just somewhere his garage door is opening and closing. His car, he remote started his car so it would warm up.
It turned on old Bill, and he was like, let's drink to the lady in the white shirt.
Old Bill just crashes through the wall like the Kool-Aid Man and just kills everybody.
Yes, please. Oh, man. All right, let's keep going here. I got a couple more scenes for you. So Caleb hears back from his interview that he didn't get the job. When he tries to ask what he could work on to be a better fit for the job, he finds out that he was talking to an automated system. After the call, he opens up the Rico app and takes another job. I think we've all felt the pain of dealing with automated telephone systems.
Yeah, that was a great scene. Short and sweet and to the point and got the message across. And I really liked it.
Absolutely. Next up, Dolores tries to get Liam to open up about whatever trouble he's in. He tells her that he's not actually in control of Rehoboam, that his father's partner locked him out of it soon after his father died. Dolores tries to get a name out of Liam, but Liam's right-hand man, Martin, comes in and tases Dolores and informs Liam that she hasn't been truthful about her identity. This is cool. Interesting. Not necessarily what I expected because, as I said previously, pretty much any time, like I feel like there could have been 3 more episodes of Dolores trying to get information out of Liam, right?
Mm-hmm.
Glad that's not the case here.
Yep, me too.
More room for Tommy Flanagan to be awesome.
Mm-hmm. More room for that sick silver head of hair to strut around.
Oh, yeah. I was very curious. I was like, does that taser actually do anything to Dolores?
Yeah, I don't know either. I guess a taser probably does.
Yeah, I don't know. There's still some type of electrical impulses in there, I would assume. So yeah, and then like we said previously, I liked a lot of the stuff about the fact that he answers these questions. He's like, I don't know anything about Rehoboam. Somebody else does. I would tell you this guy, but I can't because he would already know. And then like Tommy Flanagan walks in as almost to kind of be like, yeah, he does know, and we're going to deal with it right now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Very cool.
I like that. I like that character being reduced down to just like figurehead, as he said. It was such a disappointment. I was like, this is good.
Yeah, absolutely.
You are not the William of this season.
Yeah. Man, Jimmy Simpson though.
So cool.
Yeah, and it's like I there's still part of me that's like, will we see more of him? But we'll have to see.
I bet we will. Anyway,
that'd be nice.
Sorry.
Those nice trimmed eyebrows to make him look more like Ed Harris. Yeah. Caleb shows up for his Rico job and is informed that he's delivering a purse and a car. He takes the car to the landing zone where Martin is headed. Caleb questions the man on the site because he doesn't typically, quote, do personals, but the man tells him to beat it and threatens him with a gun before he walks away. As he walks away, he notices the blonde woman in the chopper with 2 men. Martin exits the chopper and has his men bring Dolores into the car that Caleb brought, and they drive off. Caleb walks along the water and answers a call from Francis. This is where we get the moment of Caleb saying, this isn't the first time a gun has been pointed at me, and this isn't the first time that I'd be shot in the head. Mm-hmm. Pretty interesting. Did make me kind of be like, all right, is he some kind of host? But who knows? I'm sure we'll find out more.
Yeah, more to come. We'll find out eventually.
Yeah. Any other thoughts about that stuff? The quadcoptery Tron looking helicopter things are pretty sweet.
Yeah, I figured you'd like that.
I'll take one.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And then promptly dive it into a lake of some kind because drones are hard. All right. Martin takes Dolores to the rendezvous point that was in her encrypted text message that I forgot to mention, but nobody is there and no one arrives. He orders his men to overdose Dolores, but it doesn't work. As a car pulls up with a shadowy figure, Martin calls the men out of the car to come and deal with it with him, but Dolores takes control of the situation and kills almost everyone save for Martin, who gets away. She hops in another car to chase after him and recovers her gun from the dead man in the passenger seat. The car pulling up and being in like intimidation mode, like the Batmobile, was pretty sweet.
It was awesome.
And then watching Dolores kill people in the vehicle and then exit and kill people behind the vehicle in the rearview mirror and then kill people in front of the vehicle. Watching like the depth of the focus just shift was a really cool shot. Props to director Jonathan Nolan for that one, because that was really, really sweet.
Yeah, that was an awesome sequence. It was a great way to take something that could have been like kind of by the numbers and make it interesting and ramp up the tension a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we got like 3 more scenes. Caleb talks to Francis on the phone, and Francis suggests that his comment about life being a game means you have to play to win. But Caleb informs Francis that the, quote, real Francis thought that the system doesn't care about them at all, and that he didn't have to figure out how to live in this world because he never made it back. Caleb unsubscribes from this treatment program and heads back to where he saw Dolores. So it seems to me as like they were using this as a PTSD kind of treatment program, was what I got out of it. Obviously, there might be more to it. I don't know if it's necessarily war related. But did the moment land for you, like him saying unsubscribe and like being like, this clearly isn't going to work?
It actually worked for me way better than I thought it would. And I think this is something that I would not have bought into, say, 5 years ago in my life, probably. It's something I would have been like, that's stupid. Like, why'd you think that might work? Or why would this ever work for anybody? And I think that, or why would you, maybe not necessarily that it would work, because I think that a lot of people would realize that it is ultimately you're just keeping that wound open. But I think maybe the better question is, would it actually make you feel better? And like kind of goes back to what Dolores said about if it makes you feel better, or if it works for you, who's to say that it's, not right? And I'm totally butchering what she said, but I think that the thought applies. And I think about, key people in my life, and if they were dead and I knew they were dead, and yet there was still sort of an AI recreation of them that was able to call me and talk to me, I mean, hell yeah, I would do it. I think everybody would. And whether you recognize the futility of it and kind of the inherent sadness of it all, doesn't really matter, I mean, you're gonna hang in there as long as you feel it brings you some sort of comfort or closure, or you just give up on it like he did.
Yeah, there's another Black Mirror episode. It's making me kind of realize this episode is a little bit of a Black Mirror greatest hits in some ways, but or at least we're kind of headed there. It's all dystopian future stuff, clearly, yeah. But the one that stars Donald Gleason and
Haley Atwell.
Yes, Haley Atwell. It's a very good episode, and just kind of the idea, like you said, like whether or not it would make you feel better. Does it get you over that initial trauma? Can it help you work through things at all? Like but can you divorce yourself from the idea that they've like probably just reconstructed some AI with what they knew about your friend, or are you just always seeing it for what it is rather than like buying into the therapy of it? So this is a moment that didn't necessarily land with me the first time when I watched it, but when I watched through the second time taking notes, I was like, okay, I can feel this a little bit better. By the time he said unsubscribe the first time around, I was like, ooh, but for some reason I was just kind of weirded out by some of the dialogue and decided to let it go the second time around. All right, so next scene, Martin tries to make it back to the landing zone, but Dolores manages to take him out before he can get there. Dolores asks who has control of the system, and Martin tells her the name Serac, but she'll never be able to get close to him because he has a system that will see her coming. Dolores informs Martin that he'll be doing that for her in host form. Host Martin kills real Martin and then heads to the helicopter to get back to Liam as Dolores mops up the rest of the situation. We talked about this a bit already as well, but I do love the idea of Martin being installed as a mole for Dolores.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Very curious to understand if he knows enough about Martin to really stand in well enough. I don't know how much that the coming episodes might be about that, and if Liam realizes that something is up, or if other people that Martin has contact with are realize something is up, but I like the idea of it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think that like, we see this kind of thing in a lot of like mob movies where the level of trust in those lieutenants is so high that they can frequently just walk into a place and like bark orders and people will step to it. At least the level of, maybe not the level of trust, but the level of obedience to like the foot soldiers and the other people around them. And Liam, is clearly threatened and intimidated by Martin, so I think he'll probably just go along with whatever.
Yeah, that's true. He's got a position of power over him, right? So that makes sense. I didn't necessarily summarize it here, but this is also the moment where Dolores falls into Caleb's arms as well. It's basically the end of the episode. There are 2 short scenes after that, but
yeah, again, it's just it's awesome. It reminds me actually of, I used the phrase femme fatale earlier, and it reminds me of the comic book Fatale, like straight up, where there's this, there's a series of men that this woman keeps interacting with over like years, and the same situation happens to all of them. It kind of gets silly by the end, but like in a good way, where like these guys are going about their lives, and this beautiful, mysterious woman with a checkered past literally like falls into their arms, and they have to like help her, and she's total like damsel in distress, yet is the most powerful person in the room at all times, and it's just perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. There were some people that noted that it was a very similar fall into the man's arms that happened as with William in the first season as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is a cool callback at least.
Definitely.
There were also, I had somebody that retweeted the tweet that I had made about how similar they were waking up, Caleb and Dolores, and they said, let me try and find it here. I'm looking. It was a very interesting point, so I hope I still have it here somewhere. I think I lost it, but they basically were just kind of like, if this all leads to some sort of stupid like heterosexual, these people were meant for each other kind of thing, then I'm gonna be kind of pissed. I think she said, I'm gonna go into Jonathan and Lisa's house and burn it down or something like that, which, you know, we'll see where the story goes. I don't necessarily think it's gonna be headed there. I don't think Rachel Wood would let it head there, you know.
It's just the scene from the beach from the end of season 1 where she falls into Teddy's arms by the beach and they're all there watching.
Yeah, it's exactly what they were like trying to skewer in that scene.
I forgot what that scene was called or what his little storyline was called, but it was
Journey into Night.
That's right. It was perfect. Yeah, that's
Beautiful.
exactly what we saw. Journey into Night. Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah. So there's 2 other little scenes. We have Bernard hiring a boat captain to get himself back into Westworld. Pretty cool.
Very cool.
It's kind of fun that he like points to somewhere in the middle of the sea, and the dude's like, "Why are you going there?" He's just like, "Westworld."
Oh yeah. So and then the guy kind of looks at him like, all right. For some reason, it reminded me of the movie Mortal Kombat with that like shitty boat that they take.
Beautiful.
To get to the tournament. And I want to like see scenes of Bernard in the boat in the next episode and then intercut it with the shots of Scorpion and Sub-Zero coming out of that door below deck. So sweet.
Beautiful. With the song Chinese Ninja Warrior playing in the background.
Obviously.
All right, and then we did get a little post credit scene. Did you see the post credit scene?
I don't. Maybe? What was it?
With Maeve?
No, I did not.
Okay. Well, there's a post-credit scene with Maeve. It's very short. She wakes up in an unfamiliar place with nice clothes and her makeup done. She finds a dead German and a gagged German in the room next door. She looks out her window to find herself in a Nazi-controlled town in Europe, giving us our first glance of War World.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So it looks like, obviously, Maeve has been reinserted back into the park. And it's my guess that Bernard is probably headed back to the park to get some help, and that will probably be Maeve.
Yeah.
But to see this new environment, and I think it was officially deemed War World. It was revealed on the Delos Destinations website leading up to the season. But it looks like there's like a Nazi-occupied Germany or some European country that they have that guests can come and act out either the fantasy of killing Nazis or the fantasy of being one. So that'll be interesting. Some weird Hitler crossover between our TV recap shows here.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to watch that then.
So we'll see how that goes.
I didn't realize that there was something after. I have to go watch it.
Yeah, it was buried in those credits a little bit. It wasn't at the very, very end, but it was late enough in there that I feel like it was pretty easy to miss. I was shocked that it happened because I think I pulled my phone out and I went on Twitter to see what people were saying, and then it started up. I was like, oh, so I should have let you know about that, but I didn't because we're not professionals here.
But we play them on TV.
Yes, we play them on the podcast feed.
Well, it's been an unusual week for scheduling and a lifestyle adjustments in general. So we're still finding our footing and getting back into the swing of things.
Absolutely, yeah. It's we're doing our best. I'm glad we got something recorded this week, and we're excited for more Westworld, I think.
Absolutely.
I will say, watching it the second time through, things did land better for me than they did the first time. I think it was just a little bit of culture shock.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good sign, because they landed so well for me the first time that if I watched it again, they might land even better.
Yeah, I think it's just, warming up to what they're trying to pull off. There was a lot to set up in this episode, and I think they did it pretty well. It was just I was nervous about it for some reason.
Well, I think that's understandable because the first two seasons are so strong that we keep waiting for like a big misstep, and nobody wants it, but it feels like it might happen. So we just don't want it to.
Yeah, these damn Nolans and their good track records.
Dude, that's exactly what I was going to say. We're all waiting for Christopher Nolan to make a dud because he hasn't. It's absurd. At least not in most popular opinion. There's plenty of poo-pooers out there for certain of his movies, but we all think he's doing great over here.
Well, he might have a whole nother year to make sure Tenet's okay. So.
Oh my God. No, he'll just release it. He'll be like, whatever, put it out.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
But it will never see VOD before a theater, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right. Any other thoughts?
No, I'm really happy with the characters that we caught up with, even though there weren't that many of them. It definitely felt like the sort of key players, tier 1 of key players, and I really like the new characters a lot. I'm actually incredibly pleasantly surprised with how much I like them and how okay I am with it all. I'm really looking forward to catching up with the rest of the gang from Westworld, though, and seeing those familiar faces get reintroduced to us. It'll be really fun to see all of them again. Those that still remain, anyway.
Awesome. Yeah, I pretty much agree with all that, despite being a little more lukewarm on the reception of this one. But I think I'm hoping it's only even better received by myself from here on out. So.
Yeah, I hope so too.
All right. Once again, you can find more episodes of our podcast on westworld.fm. We're also on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play Music, or Google Play Podcasts, I think it's called now, since we haven't recorded one of these in 2 years. We're also Westworld FM on Twitter, and you can email us at westworldfm@gmail.com to tell us what you think of our show and share your thoughts on HBO's Westworld so we can read them on our show. Send us corrections, observations, or anything regarding Westworld or our podcast. The Midwest Podcast Network has several other shows about video games, horror movies, and more. Check out all of our shows at MidwestPodcastNetwork.com. Our theme music is the song Industrial Cinematic by Kevin MacLeod, and it is being used under an Attribution Creative Commons license. That's it for our episode this week, and we're excited for the next episode of Westworld. We'll have another episode of our podcast out after that, but until then, may you rest and have a deep and dreamless slumber.